The first time I met Karen Fields, she wasn't just knocking on my door. She was inspecting it. "I counted 4 cobwebs around your porch light," she said, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning like a drone. "Technically, that's a sanitation violation. I'll let it slide this time." It was my 3rd day in Rosewood Bluffs, a neighborhood marketed as exclusive, serene, and neighborly. I'd bought the place sight unseen, cash deal, hoping to enjoy retirement working on motorcycles. In peace, the detached garage was a dream. Tall ceilings, soundproof insulation, a hydraulic lift, and wall-to-wall tools arranged like an art gallery. Karen, however, saw it as a threat. She stood 5'0", with a stiff blonde bob and a designer jogging suit that hadn't seen a treadmill in years. The glinting HOA badge around her neck looked more law enforcement than volunteer committee. But it wasn't her wardrobe that grated. It was her eyes, cold, calculating, like she already had my obituary drafted, ready for HOA newsletter publication. "My name's Cole Dawson," I said evenly, offering a hand. She glanced at it like I'd presented her with a dirty sock. "Karen Fields. I'm head of the HOA. You'll want to review our covenants. We have expectations here." Her voice dripped with condescension, and before I could respond, she turned on her heel and marched away, clipboard tucked tight to her chest, like a loaded weapon. That evening, I got my first violation notice. Garage door left open for extended period, disturbing visual harmony. It had been open for 10 minutes. I laughed at first. Then came the weekly notices. Improper garbage placement. Aggressively yellow porch light bulb. Grass height 1 inch above code. Each letter printed on expensive letterhead. Each one signed K. Fields, President, Rosewood HOA. But Karen wasn't the real problem. Her son, Tyler, was. At 16, Tyler was all entitlement and zero accountability. I first spotted him coasting down the sidewalk on an electric skateboard, slaloming between driveways like he owned them. I gave him a polite nod. He sneered. Over the weeks, he escalated. Trash tossed onto my yard. Loud music outside my garage window. One morning, I stepped out to find chewing gum, mashed into my mailbox lock. And then came the graffiti, swirls of obscenities on the sidewalk in front of my home. I confronted him once, calmly. "You think this is funny?" he smirked. "My mom runs the HOA. Maybe watch your tone." I reported him to the board. Nothing came of it. Karen claimed he was being targeted by aggressive veterans. She said that in an open meeting, mocking my service, while her son vandalized my property. 2 nights later, it escalated. I opened the garage just after dawn, my gut twisted. My motorcycle, an immaculate 1976 Harley shovelhead I'd been restoring for a veterans charity auction, was defaced, keyed deep across the tank. The rear tire was slashed. Spray paint scrawled across the garage wall in dripping black letters. "Freak." The tool rack was knocked over. A cracked spark plug had been jammed into the tailpipe. It was deliberate. It was personal. I checked my security feed, heart pounding. There he was, Tyler Fields, hoodie half zipped, hopping my side fence with a spray can in hand. He danced, laughed, and made sure to face the camera before flipping it off. I stared at the paused footage, knuckles white on the keyboard. He knew exactly what he was doing. Minutes later, I was outside, shaking as I dialed the sheriff's department. When the deputy arrived, I handed him a flash drive of the footage. He watched it silently, then sighed. "Clear trespassing," he said. "But the damage? We'll need more." No camera inside caught him in the act. Not directly, I admitted. Just him entering and exiting. He handed the drive back. I'll write it up, but between you and me, unless he confesses, or we find prints, it's a long road to charges. Long road or not, I was already halfway down it, and I wasn't turning back. That night, I watched the clip again. Tyler had paused right before hopping the fence, looked dead into the lens, and mouthed something. I rewound, zoomed, played it again. My mom runs the HOA. He said it like a promise, like a shield, like nothing, and no one could touch him. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that jagged black spray paint, heard the hiss of the can, and watched Tyler's smug face, mocking me from the security feed. A teenage punk vandalized my garage. That I could handle. But what burned wasn't just the damage. It was the arrogance, the entitlement, that smirk that said, I'm untouchable. Karen had built her kingdom on HOA rules, but she ruled like a tyrant, writing citations for lawn length, while ignoring criminal behavior under her own roof. I was done playing nice. First, I fixed the cameras, installed new wide-angle lenses inside the garage, added motion sensors, infrared, even a cloud backup. Then I printed a still frame of Tyler's face from the security footage and tacked it to the garage wall, like a wanted poster, a reminder. By the third day, I had an email from the HOA. Per Neighborhood Aesthetics Code, excessive surveillance equipment is strongly discouraged. Signed as always, K. Fields. She wanted silence. Submission. She got a certified letter instead. I sent a formal complaint to the entire HOA board, complete with timestamps, video evidence, and an itemized estimate of the damage. Nearly $4,700. The Harley alone was irreplaceable, its tank custom painted by a disabled vet with terminal cancer. That made it more than personal. It made it sacred. The board met 2 days later. I attended in person, uninvited but unbothered. Karen sat at the head of the table, draped in a pearl cardigan, like a judge about to issue sentencing. Her eyes narrowed. As I entered, "Mr. Dawson," she said coolly, "this is a closed session." I held up a manila envelope. "Then consider this my statement for the record." She flinched at the photos, the paint, the tire, the spark plug. Another board member, Paul Jenkins, a soft-spoken accountant type, leaned in. "Is that Tyler? Caught on camera," I said. "Entering, exiting, clear intent. You can read the timestamps for yourself." Karen's lips pinched. "My son is a minor, Mr. Dawson. You've invaded his privacy, and frankly, this is bordering on harassment. Your son committed a felony." I snapped, voice rising. "Don't confuse consequence with harassment." Paul cleared his throat. "If we ignore this, we're complicit," Karen hissed under her breath. But it was too late. The board was splintering. She may have ruled through intimidation and etiquette before, but vandalism changed the equation, especially with evidence. By week's end, I got a notice. The HOA had opened an internal inquiry into behavior unbecoming of an HOA officer's household. A slap on the wrist maybe, but a crack in the armor. That same night, Tyler struck again. This time, he didn't go after the garage. He went after the man. As I returned from the hardware store, I found a dozen eggs smashed across my front porch. My truck windshield was spiderwebbed, shattered by a baseball-sized rock still lying on the ground. And on my front door, spray-painted in giant red letters, "Old freaks don't belong here." I didn't get mad. I got meticulous. I called the sheriff again. This time, they brought a crime scene unit. Tyler had left behind a partial print on the rock. The video captured him again, face half covered, but unmistakable. Same hoodie, same arrogant strut. But this time, I had something else. One of my motion cameras caught him exiting the vandalized scene, holding a can of red spray paint, laughing. Behind him, a voice called out from the street, "You better hurry, Ty. Mom's gonna kill you if you get caught." Another teenager. A witness. The deputy took notes. Then I played my last card. I pulled his cell number from a neighborhood phone tree, I said, handing over a screenshot. He posted a story on his private Snap at 10:47 p.m., said, "Just wrecked Grandpa's dumb house. LOL. HOA royalty baby." The deputy blinked. He posted it. I nodded. Time-stamped, geotagged, and public for 5 hours, I added. I grabbed a screen record before it vanished. The deputy let out a low whistle. That's enough for a warrant. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Karen was a cornered animal now, and something in my gut told me she'd rather burn down the whole neighborhood than let her kingdom fall. But for the first time since I moved in, I saw something new in her eyes when I passed her the next morning. It wasn't smugness, it was fear, and I was just getting started. 2 days after the sheriff's visit, the silence on Rosewood Lane felt weaponized. Lawns were still mowed, flags still fluttered, but neighbors who once waved now averted their eyes. Conversations halted when I passed. It wasn't guilt. They were waiting, watching, wondering if the empire Karen Fields had built out of bylaws and fear was finally crumbling. I didn't blame them for the silence. Karen ruled, not with charm, but with precision strikes, shaming residents over garbage cans, left visible for more than 15 minutes post-collection, fining families for using seasonal door wreaths that weren't pre-approved. People had learned to stay quiet, but the one person who wasn't quiet anymore, Tyler, he didn't seem scared. He seemed bolder. I caught him outside 2 nights later, sitting on the hood of his mom's Lexus, vaping and grinning as if he hadn't just been served. A police summons. The arrogance hadn't cracked. If anything, it calcified. "Nice camera setup," he called across the street. "You sleeping with a tinfoil hat too?" I didn't answer. I hear old people like naps. Don't sleep too hard. You never know when things might go boom. He mimicked an explosion with his hands and mouth, cackling. The moment I stepped off the curb, he darted back inside. Coward. That was the last time he laughed. The arrest came on a Saturday morning, just after sunrise. 2 deputies in brown uniforms pulled up in an unmarked SUV. They didn't use sirens. They didn't need to. Tyler was still in pajama pants when they cuffed him on the porch. Karen screamed like a banshee, flailing in a silk robe, blocking the doorway with outstretched arms. "You can't do this," she shrieked. "I'm the HOA president. This is harassment." The deputy's reply was cold and final. "Your title has no bearing on the law, ma'am. Step aside." Neighbors peeked through curtains. A few even stepped out onto porches. For once, no one spoke up to defend her. Tyler's face, red and snarling, turned to me as he was led past my driveway. "This is your fault. You're dead, man. You hear me? Dead!" He barked the words like a spoiled prince being dethroned. I didn't flinch. I just watched the door of the SUV shut behind him with a satisfying clunk. That evening, Karen showed up at my doorstep. No clipboard, no citations, just rage. She didn't knock. She pounded. I opened the door halfway. Her eyes were bloodshot. Eyeliner smudged like melted plastic. "Do you realize what you've done?" she hissed. "Your son vandalized private property. That's a crime." I replied calmly. "You taught him to believe rules don't apply to him. That's not on me." Her lips trembled. "He's a child." "No. He's a 16-year-old who believed being your son made him invincible. He learned otherwise. Karen stepped closer, voice low and trembling. I'll make sure your life here is miserable. You want to play war, Mr. Dawson? You haven't seen war. I looked her dead in the eye. Ma'am, I've been to war, and it didn't scare me half as much as a teenage boy with a spray can and a mommy complex. She left in silence. But the storm she was brewing came the next morning. I woke to another violation letter, 15 of them actually, stuffed into my mailbox, taped to my front door, zip-tied to the flagpole. Everything from improper fencing to garage light emitting excessive lumens after dusk. The kicker, a $1,200 fine for hostile conduct toward HOA leadership. It was a final desperate flail. I didn't react. I called my lawyer instead. By the following Thursday, I attended a county hearing alongside my attorney, 2 HOA board members who'd quietly defected from Karen's control, and a representative from the sheriff's office. The meeting was brief. Karen's authority had been weaponized, and now it was being dismantled, piece by piece. The board, under pressure, voted to suspend her presidency pending an internal ethics investigation. Her power evaporated before her eyes when she stormed out of the building, her pace quick and shaky. I didn't gloat. There was no need. For the first time, the neighborhood watched her retreat. Not with fear, but with relief. I walked home through Rosewood Bluffs with the sun, high overhead, lawns still trimmed, fences still pristine. But something fundamental had shifted. The silence was gone. A neighbor across the street raised a hand in a hesitant wave. I nodded back. Karen's reign wasn't over yet, but the clock was ticking, and I was more patient than she could ever imagine. 3 weeks passed, and the kingdom of Karen finally cracked. Tyler was charged with 2 counts of vandalism and 1 count of criminal mischief. His juvenile record wouldn't haunt him forever, but it would leave a mark, especially after the judge ordered 200 hours of community service and mandatory anger management. He wasn't laughing anymore. He now spent his Saturdays scraping gum off picnic tables at the town park, under the supervision of a retired Marine with no patience for entitlement. From what I heard, the old man ran his volunteer crew like a boot camp. Poetic, really, but it was his mother who took the real fall. The HOA board met one last time behind closed doors. I wasn't present, but Paul Jenkins called me afterward. His voice was subdued, almost reverent. "She's out," he said. "Unanimous vote, removed from office, permanently." "What about the fines?" I asked. "Dismissed. All of them. Retroactively. We're also launching a full review of enforcement practices. Things are going to change around here." For the first time since I moved to Rosewood Bluffs, I exhaled without tension. Karen was dethroned, but I wasn't. Done. Her retaliation had gone too far. Fabricated citations, public humiliation, harassment. My lawyer filed a formal complaint with the county's HOA Oversight Commission, and we submitted evidence of abuse of authority and personal retaliation. Then came the civil suit. It wasn't about money. It was about accountability. Karen had covered for her son, weaponized her position, and harassed a neighbor to protect her image. That wasn't leadership. That was negligence dressed up in a cardigan. The moment she was served, I heard the scream from across the street. She tried, to spin the story, told neighbors I was targeting her family, that I was mentally unstable. But people had stopped listening. No one defended her anymore. One neighbor, Cheryl, from 2 houses down, stopped me at the mailbox. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner," she whispered. "She fined us for having wind chimes last year. Said they violated the tranquility clause." I was afraid if I spoke up, she'd punish my daughter's application for a wheelchair ramp. I nodded. You're not alone. Turns out, Karen's legacy was built on silence. And once people realized they weren't the only ones who'd been mistreated, the silence shattered. She stopped showing her face in public. Her porch light stayed off. The Lexus disappeared from the driveway. Tyler vanished from the streets. Word spread that she was trying to sell the house quietly. Off market, she failed. Too many neighbors warned potential buyers. And then came the final act. I hosted a neighborhood barbecue. It wasn't a celebration. It was a reclamation. No HOA red tape. No pre-approval. Just smoked ribs, folding chairs, and music that played past sunset. People brought potato salad and stories. Kids ran through sprinklers. Laughter replaced fear. Even Paul showed up. Button-down shirt, drink in hand. This feels different, he said. Watching a couple of teenagers toss a football across my lawn. Lighter. It's what a neighborhood is supposed to feel like, I replied. He nodded. About time we remembered that. As twilight settled, I stood near the grill and looked across the street. Karen's house was dark, still, silent. A "I for sale" sign finally appeared on her lawn a week later. It stayed up for months. Eventually, a young couple bought it. New energy, new hope, no trace of tyranny. As for me, I never replaced the spray-painted garage door. I had it sealed, cleaned, but I left a faint outline of the graffiti intact, not as a scar, as a reminder. Because this story wasn't just about a garage or a vandal. It was about standing up to the lie that power grants immunity. Karen forgot what real leadership looked like. She mistook fear for respect, silence for compliance. But when the storm finally came, it wasn't a loud rebellion. It was the quiet refusal to be bullied. It was cameras being installed, voices being raised, and neighbors finding their spine. It was a kingdom toppled, not with torches, but with truth. And when people ask what finally brought her down, I tell them the truth. It wasn't me, it was her son, with a can of spray paint and a mouth too arrogant for his own good. Sometimes justice doesn't come from the courthouse. Sometimes it starts with a single smirk caught on camera.